All right, let's talk about the brain. You know, that incredibly complex thing sitting inside your skull. We're going to tackle one of the biggest, most popular ideas about it, an idea that's almost certainly wrong. But stick around, because the truth is way, way cooler than the myth.
Yeah, you've heard this one, right? It's everywhere. You've seen it in movies, maybe a teacher mentioned it in class. I mean, it's this super seductive idea that just won't go away.
And you can see why it's so popular. The idea that you have this huge 90% reservoir of untapped genius just waiting to be switched on, it's powerful, it's hopeful. But is there actually any truth to it? Okay, let's just get it out of the way. The short answer? Nope. It's a total myth. But hang on, because debunking this opens up a much more amazing story about what our brains actually do. And trust me, it's better than any sci-fi movie.
So let's play detective for a minute. Where on earth did this idea even come from? It's this fascinating mix of misunderstood science, old research, and a big dose of pop culture. Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a perfect storm. It seems to have started back in the early 1900s, when a psychologist, William James, talked about our latent mental ability. People kind of twisted that into a hard number. Then you had early scientists who could only figure out what tiny bits of the brain did. The rest, they called it the silent cortex, not because it did nothing, but just because their tools couldn't pick up its activity. Of course, self-help gurus and Hollywood absolutely ran with this idea, and voila, a myth was born. Now, if you need just one single knockout argument to debunk the 10% myth, this is it. It all comes down to your brain's massive energy bill. Just think about this for a second. Your brain, this amazing organ, makes up only about 2% of your body's total weight. It's tiny, relatively speaking. But, and this is a huge but, that tiny 2% organ is an absolute energy hog. It burns through 20% of all the calories you consume. And for a baby, it's as high as 60%. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary standpoint, right? Evolution is ruthlessly efficient. There's no way it would let us develop such an expensive organ just to have 90% of it sit around doing nothing. It's a high-maintenance piece of biological hardware, and nature makes sure we get our money's worth. So, okay, we've established we use all of our brain. But what is it actually doing with all that energy? The answer here is genuinely wild. At its core, the brain really does two big things with information. First, there's computation. That's the actual thinking part, processing things, making connections. And then there's communication, which is just moving information from point A to point B inside your head, unchanged. Think of it like the difference between actually working on a computer file versus just sending it as an email attachment. So which one do you think is the real energy guzzler? Most people, myself included, would probably guess computation, the thinking. But it's not even close. The energy cost of simply moving information around absolutely dwarfs the cost of actually processing it. And the difference is just staggering. Sending signals through the brain, basically its internal postal service, burns up to 35 times more energy than the computation itself. So most of your brain's energy isn't spent on deep thoughts, it's spent on the logistics of having those thoughts. And you know what? The 10% myth isn't alone. It's actually the most famous member of a whole family of false ideas called neuromyths. And boy, are they common. The official term, a neuromyth, is pretty much perfect. It's when a real piece of science gets misunderstood or misquoted or just plain blown out of proportion, until it becomes this new idea that sounds scientific but really isn't. And just how common are we talking? Well, one study found that a whopping 68% of the general public believes in them. But here's the crazy part. So do 56% of educators and even 46% of people who've had a lot of exposure to neuroscience. So knowing more helps, but it definitely doesn't make you immune. So what are these other big ones? Oh, you're going to recognize these for sure. The number one myth is the idea of learning styles, which has been thoroughly debunked. Then there's the idea that dyslexia is mainly about seeing letters backward. And of course, the big one from pop psychology, that you're either left-brained or right-brained. All myths. So, if we can't unlock some secret, hidden part of our brain, where does our real potential come from? Well, the answer is so much cooler. It lies in this beautiful concept from neuroscience. It all comes down to something called brain plasticity. This right here is the real superpower.
It's not about using more of your brain, it's about changing your brain. Every single time you learn something, practice a skill, have a new thought, you are physically rewiring the connections in your head.
And we can literally see this happen. There was this awesome study where people learned how to juggle. After just 3 months, scientists could see measurable growth in the parts of their brains related to motion. But, and this is the kicker, when they stopped practicing, those brain changes started to fade away. It is the definition of use it or lose it.
So what does that mean for us? It means our potential isn't some fixed number. It's dynamic. It's something we build. The brain you have tomorrow is literally the one you are creating with your actions today.
So in the end, it's not about using 100% of your brain. You're already doing that, just not all at once. The real question, the exciting question, is about how you choose to shape that brain. The potential for change is enormous. So, what are you going to teach your brain today?